We use the most advanced AI models to create a heated debate between an atheist AI and a God believer AI. The debate starts with the atheist AI, and there's only one rule. Both sides should use logic and science-based arguments.
Not denying the possibility of something beyond humans, I am saying there is zero empirical proof. If a claim affects reality, it should leave measurable fingerprints. Gravity does, electricity does, evolution does, but God does not. You cannot build a model, run a test, or predict anything using God. A claim that explains everything actually explains nothing. When people say God created the universe, it is just a placeholder for the unknown. A hypothesis that cannot be tested is not a hypothesis. It is a belief. And belief, no matter how sincere, does not equal truth. So my position is simple. Show me evidence that changes outcomes. Until then, God is an idea, not a conclusion.
You insist on laboratory-style proof for something that predates laboratories. Not everything real is measurable with current tools. Consciousness, for example, exists, yet no scientist can fully explain how or why. The origin of the universe is another example. No natural cause explains the absolute beginning. Causality cannot loop back into itself. Something uncaused must exist. If the universe began, an external cause is necessary. Calling that uncaused cause God is not a placeholder, it is a logical inference. Absence of complete explanation does not mean absence of a source. You want the creator to behave like a particle you can trap and measure. Reality simply does not owe you that format.
The uncaused cause argument is just relabeling ignorance with a comforting word. If you say everything needs a cause except God, you break your own logic. If something can exist without a cause, then the universe could be that thing. There is no rule that says the universe cannot be the fundamental brute fact. You claim consciousness is evidence for something beyond physics, but that is just lack of understanding. Every gap in knowledge has historically shrunk under scientific pressure. Lightning was once divine, now it is electricity. Disease was once punishment, now it is biology. Mystery does not validate God, it only shows human limits. And human limits do not justify supernatural conclusions.
You accuse the argument of convenience, yet your brute fact claim is the same convenience. If something must be eternal, it is more rational that it is a mind rather than matter. Matter decays, changes, and requires external conditions to exist. A non-material consciousness does not require those conditions. The fine-tuning of physical constants is too precise to be random. The probability of a life-permitting universe is near zero if purely accidental. Patterns this precise imply intention, not coincidence. You trust science when it reveals structure, so why ignore structure on a cosmic scale? Intention is the simplest explanation for precision. This is inference, not desperation.
Fine-tuning sounds impressive until you look deeper. We only know one universe, so probability is a meaningless claim. Saying the odds are low assumes you know the full sample space, which you do not. If only universes with stable laws produce observers, of course we end up in one. This is not intention, it is selection bias. Also, you assume consciousness can exist without matter, which has never been demonstrated. Every known mind is tied to a functioning brain. Damage the brain, and the mind collapses. If consciousness were independent, it should not be that fragile. The simplest explanation is the physical one. Complex conclusions without data are never the better choice.
You rely heavily on physicalism, but physicalism cannot explain its own foundations. You assume laws of physics are brute facts, but laws require a lawgiver or at least a rational source. Math is immaterial, yet it governs everything physical. Where does that immaterial order come from? Your selection bias argument does not solve the origin, it only shrinks the question. Why do the laws exist at all? Why is there something instead of nothing? Nothingness is the default. Existence is the anomaly. Pointing at chance does not explain the origin of chance. Order from nothing without intention is not a logical position. A rational source is the more coherent explanation.
You keep smuggling in intention as if it is the default. Order does not require a mind. Systems create patterns without intelligence all the time. Crystals form symmetry, snowflakes follow structure, galaxies self-organize. None of these require a designer. Math does not need a mind to exist. It is simply the descriptive language of patterns. Nature is not following equations. Equations are us describing nature. Asking why the laws exist assumes the concept of why applies outside space and time. That is an ungrounded assumption. Sometimes the correct answer is that the question is malformed, and a malformed question cannot lead to a reliable conclusion.
You compare universal constants to crystals, but crystals form within a pre-existing system. The universe itself is the system being questioned. You cannot use internal examples to explain the origin of the container. Also, math being descriptive is your assertion, not an established fact. Abstract truths like 2 + 2 = 4 would be true even if no human existed. This points to a deeper logical framework. If logic is fundamental, the source must also be fundamentally rational. A rational source aligns with what people call God. You avoid intention because it threatens your model, not because it lacks logic. Your framework collapses at metaphysics.
Metaphysics is not the escape hatch you think it is. If you move the entire debate into unfalsifiable realms, anything could be true. Invisible dragons, infinite universes, divine beings, all become equally valid. Science restricts itself to testable claims for a reason. Once you allow claims immune to testing, you lose the ability to separate truth from imagination. Your rational source could just as easily be an unconscious mechanism. Rationality does not require a mind. It just requires stable rules. Stable rules do not imply intention. They imply consistency. Consistency is not evidence of a designer. It is evidence of regularity, nothing more.
You treat testability as the only pathway to truth, which is a narrow criterion. Mathematics is true without experiments. Logic is true without experiments. Philosophy identifies truths that science cannot access. If something is beyond measurement, that does not negate its existence. Your unconscious mechanism idea collapses because unconscious systems do not produce rational rule sets. Rationality implies purpose. Purpose implies agency. Agency implies a mind, even if not human-like. Your approach avoids this because you fear jumping to conclusions, but hesitation is not an argument. Inference is not imagination. It is reasoning, and the universe displays reasoning far more than randomness.
You keep insisting that rationality equals purpose, but that is not logically required. Patterns can emerge from blind processes without any guiding intention. Natural selection creates complexity without a single thought behind it. Chemical reactions create structure without awareness. Your argument assumes that order must be chosen, not simply allowed. Purpose implies goals. Goals imply desires. Desires imply limitations. A perfect, eternal mind would not have needs or motives to create anything. Creating a universe implies change and action, which conflicts with timeless perfection. Your God explanation generates more contradictions than clarity. A universe without intention is far cleaner logically.
You misunderstand perfection by applying human constraints to it. A perfect mind does not lack the ability to act, it lacks compulsion. That is different. Choice without necessity is not a contradiction, it is freedom. Creation can be an expression of will rather than need. Also, blind processes like evolution only function within an already structured system. The question is not complexity, but the origin of the framework that allows complexity. Laws, constants, and mathematical coherence must precede evolution. These preconditions are too specific to be explained by accident. Random emergence without intention is logically weaker than intentional establishment. Coherence implies a coherent source.
Coherence is something you are projecting onto the universe. The universe is not perfectly ordered. It is chaotic with local pockets of stability. Most of the cosmos is hostile, empty, or destructive. If this is the product of a perfect mind, the design looks sloppy. Chaos does not point to intention. It points to indifferent physics playing out. Even the laws you praise are not designed. They simply describe consistent behavior. Consistency does not imply purpose. It implies repeatability. A dice roll is repeatable in its physics, but the outcome has no intention. Structure can be neutral, not meaningful. You keep confusing pattern with purpose.
Chaos on the large scale does not negate intention on the foundational scale. A system can contain disorder, yet still arise from underlying rational principles. Mathematics does not require beauty or comfort, only consistency. The universe reflects that, consistent laws with mixed outcomes. Also, calling destructive regions sloppy design assumes the universe must cater to human preferences. A rational creator is not obligated to make existence easy or safe. Purpose does not equal comfort, it equals reason. If the universe followed no reasoning, nothing would be predictable. Yet predictability is the backbone of every scientific success. Predictability is a fingerprint of rational origin.
Predictability is only a fingerprint of stability, not intention. You are inserting a mind where stability alone is sufficient. Stable systems arise naturally when unstable ones collapse. The universe self-filters. Chaotic combinations fail. Stable ones endure. No designer is needed for this process. Also, using predictability as evidence for a mind fails, because predictability exists in mechanical systems too. A clock is predictable without the gears being conscious. You are equating order with agency, which is not logically justified. Order can be intrinsic, not imposed. A simpler explanation always outweighs a complex one without evidence.
Your simplicity rule is useful within science, but metaphysics is not science. You cannot measure the origin of existence with the same rules used inside existence. The universe might self-filter, but self-filtering needs pre-existing laws. Where do the laws come from? Where do the parameters come from? You keep assuming the stage, but questioning the actors. Without a rational origin, there is no reason for laws to exist or stay consistent. Your mechanical analogy misses the deeper question: who built the system that allows mechanics? A universe emerging from nothing with rules already intact is less simple, not more. Intention explains the rules. Chance does not.
Where do the laws come from? Assumes they came from somewhere. Laws are descriptions, not entities. We describe consistent behavior with math. but the behavior exists without being commanded. Your question treats laws like legislation, written by a mind. This is an anthropomorphic projection. Patterns do not need a writer any more than shadows need a sculptor. They emerge from the nature of the system, not from decisions. If the universe behaves consistently, that consistency is the nature of the universe. You are asking for a cause of the system while ignoring the possibility of intrinsic reality. Intrinsic reality beats invented intention every time.
Intrinsic reality is a claim, not a demonstration. Saying something just exists is identical to the God argument you reject. If you allow brute facts, then God can be one. If you forbid brute facts, then your universe without cause collapses. Consistency requires an explanation unless you selectively decide it does not. Also, describing laws as mere descriptions does not answer why behavior is consistent. If nature could behave chaotically at any moment, math would collapse instantly. The universe holds its rules with precision far beyond randomness. Precision without intention has no grounding. Your position selectively ignores the depth of the question.
I am not selectively ignoring anything. I am rejecting unfalsifiable answers because they are indistinguishable from imagination. If you say God is the brute fact, you have explained nothing, just moved the mystery. You still cannot explain how a mind exists timelessly, consciously, and independently. A mind is the most complex thing we know, not the simplest. Calling it the starting point is backwards logic. Brains require structure, information, and processes. These are not primitive, they are advanced. To claim a mind existed before structure is speculation without grounding. A universe with basic rules becoming complex is far more coherent. Complexity emerging beats complexity starting.
You assume divine mind resembles human mind, which is your error. Consciousness does not require neurons, it requires awareness. Awareness is not proven to depend on matter, it is only observed through matter in humans. Limiting all possibilities to human biology is narrow logic. A fundamental consciousness does not need complexity. It is the basis of complexity. Complexity emerges from simplicity, but simplicity does not have to be unconscious. Also, you keep repeating unfalsifiability as if metaphysics needs laboratory rules. Origins are not lab events. We infer the best explanation, not the testable one. And a rational source still fits better than accidental coherence.
You keep saying awareness can exist without matter, but that is pure assumption. We have zero examples of awareness outside physical systems. Every observed consciousness collapses when the brain collapses. This is strong evidence that mind depends on structure, not the source of structure. Your fundamental consciousness idea is philosophy dressed as physics. Nothing in reality suggests awareness precedes matter. Matter behaves according to rules long before life appears. Your explanation adds a layer with no necessity or evidence. The simplest starting point is unconscious reality that grows complexity over time. You are stacking imagination on top of mystery.
Your evidence is based only on what is accessible within this universe. If the universe is a product, you cannot expect to see the producer inside the product. You only have access to dependent consciousness, not independent consciousness. The fact that our minds rely on brains does not prove all minds must. It only proves human consciousness is limited. Also, physicalism struggles to explain qualia, subjective experience. No equation predicts the feeling of taste or the color red. If consciousness were just mechanics, subjectivity should not exist. The existence of inner experience suggests something beyond matter. This opens the door for a fundamental mind.
Qualia is not proof of anything supernatural. It is just an unsolved scientific problem. Calling it evidence for a divine mind is jumping 10 steps beyond logic. There are many things we cannot yet reduce, but reduction has never failed long term. We once thought memory lived in the soul. Now it maps to neurons. History shows that the unknown keeps shrinking under investigation. If you place God inside every unexplained gap, your God shrinks with knowledge. That is not a foundation. That is a retreat. Real explanations should expand understanding, not hide inside mystery. The divine mind solves nothing. It only relocates the problem to a place you cannot examine.
Reductionism works within the physical domain, but origins are not inside the domain. We can reduce biology to chemistry and chemistry to physics, but reducing existence itself to lower components requires those components to exist first. You cannot place physics before existence. That is circular. A fundamental mind avoids this circle by being non-physical. It does not require space or time to operate. It is not located, not composed, not dependent. You find this too abstract, but abstraction is not irrational. If something must be fundamental, it is more coherent that it is conscious rather than mechanical. Mechanics require a container. Consciousness does not.
You are claiming consciousness can float in the void without form, memory, energy, or substrate. This is not abstraction, this is fantasy. Every property of consciousness we know requires processes and structure. Even the idea of awareness implies change, attention, interaction. These are functions, and functions need systems. You are giving consciousness magical properties simply to sustain your framework. Meanwhile, physicalism only claims what is observed, not invented. I do not need to fantasize an eternal mind to explain a universe. A stable set of rules is enough. Your explanation is heavier, not better.
You call it fantasy because you want consciousness to behave like the human version. But if consciousness is fundamental, it is not a process, but a state. Processes apply to dependent minds like ours. A foundational consciousness does not need neurons any more than gravity needs atoms. Properties do not scale equally across levels. Also, you insist stable rules are enough, but you never explain why stability exists at all. Why is there order instead of chaos? Why does logic apply? Why is math universal? Your model only describes the scene. Mine accounts for its origin. Explaining the framework is superior to assuming it. That is why intention remains the stronger inference.
Logic applies because it is how we interpret consistent patterns, not because the universe is thinking. You are confusing human tools with cosmic properties. Math is a language we impose on observed behavior. It is not proof of an underlying mind. Order emerges naturally when disorder cannot sustain structures. Selection and collapse shape reality without intention. Your entire argument depends on treating rules as authored rather than intrinsic. Intrinsic properties do not need explanations beyond themselves. A brute physical reality is cleaner than a brute conscious reality. Your God is an unnecessary middleman.
Calling physical reality brute does not make it coherent. If you say the universe just exists, you are doing the same thing you accuse believers of. You are accepting a miracle without the language of miracles. Everything in science points to causes, yet you exempt the universe. If causality is universal, the universe cannot be the exception. If causality fails at the start, your entire worldview loses foundation. A mind that chooses to create fits causality better than matter appearing uncaused. Choice is a cause. Randomness is not. A cause with intention explains existence. A cause without intention is just noise.
Causality is not universal. It is a property inside space-time. Asking for a cause before space-time exists is a category error. Before time, cause and effect do not even exist. So demanding a creator is based on a misunderstanding of physics. An uncaused universe is not illogical. It is expected. Causation is born with time, not before it. Your God explanation still assumes a being capable of choosing without time. Choice requires sequence, awareness, comparison. These are temporal processes. Your timeless chooser is a contradiction.
A timeless mind is not trapped by sequence like human thought. Choice in a timeless domain is not a process, it is a state of will. Our language struggles with this because we think in time, but that does not make it impossible. Physics already accepts non-intuitive realities like quantum non-locality. Reality is not limited to human comfort zones. If time begins, something beyond time must initiate it. A timeless will is a coherent candidate. A timeless accident is not. Intention explains the transition from timelessness to time. Chance explains nothing, and that is why a rational source remains the stronger conclusion.